Alrighty. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Wherever you find yourself today, you're welcome to Leadership Academy. Today, we are going to continue with our leadership series. So if you happen to be a part of it today, if you chance on the video, you can invite a friend to invite a friend to invite a friend to be a part of today's Leadership Academy. It's going to be an exciting one, as always. I'll just do a quick recap of what we discussed in the 101. And from there, we would continue. And again, as I said, it's going to be a very slow, we're going to go at a very slower pace because we really want to get everybody to understand what we're doing and to understand what leadership really is about. Our target is basically the youth of Africa specifically, the youth, because I always say that the misunderstanding of leadership is the problem of Africa today. And if we want to fix Africa, if we want Africa to be the best or to rise and take its rightful place in the scheme of things, then we need to fix the issue of the misunderstanding of leadership. We've been misfed. We've been, as Carter G. Woodson will put it, miseducated or misinformed, especially when it comes to leadership. And that has trickled down to basically almost every sector and everything that we do in Africa. We spoke about the fact that the definition of leadership was constructed to create us and them for rulership. And we spoke about the fact that it started from the Greek, the ancient Greek days when the leadership was carefully and craftfully defined to create an aristocratic society where a very limited group of people can rule and control the majority of the people. And so we spoke about the fact that the Greeks defined leadership as being charismatic. In other words, you were chosen by the gods. The being charismatic, charisma is a Greek word which simply means gift or the grace of the gods. The grace or the gifts of the gods. So they established the fact that, or they indoctrinated us to understand that a certain group of people have been ordained, they've been gifted by the gods to rule or to become leaders in our society. So in other words, if you're not part of that ordained group, you cannot be a ruler. You cannot be a leader. Not a ruler, but you cannot be a leader. And we also understood that the definition was crafted basically just to control the society and the community in which they live. Later on, we had some thinkers like Plato challenging that concept. Um, Even though he challenged and a few other thinkers challenged that concept, the erroneous concept of leadership was kept. It was not discarded, it was kept to be used as a tool. And today we're going to continue from that aspect. One of the tools that was used by those who craftily designed the leadership to control or to rule over people, one of the vehicles they used was the vehicle of religion, when organized religion took shape. So as we can tell, within the 14th century, most of the Westerners who encountered Africa, I'm choosing my words carefully because, when I talk about religion, I'm not talking about spirituality. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into that details today. Maybe next week I'll speak to that aspect. Religion is different from spirituality. Religion is man trying to find a better way to live and to improve his or her life in order to take control over the environment. Spirituality is man knowing his or her place and taking responsibility by using his gifts both within and without, or connecting his gifts both within and without to take dominion over what has been entrusted in his care. So these are two different things. And so religion was used to manipulate, to rule over people. And this is where most of the time I'm going to speak specifically to, I'm not going to go into details, but I'm going to speak specifically to Christianity, because that is a very perfect example I can give. I can speak to Islam as well, but I'm not going to talk about that. Like I said, I'm not going to go into details. I'm just going to touch on the surface of it, but I'm giving a typical example of what I mean by religion and spirituality. So when you take Christianity, for example, when Christianity was brought to, I'm not going to say by the missionaries, there were missionaries who brought the Christian faith to Africa and to the other parts of the world. And then there were those who saw that they could religiously use the Christian faith as a tool to oppress a people. So these are two different people. If you look at the early missionaries who came to Africa or the other parts of the world, and the gospel they brought to Africa and the other parts of the world is not the same as those who decided to use the gospel as a tool to oppress, as a tool to subdue a people or to subjugate a people into obedience. So basically, I'm just trying to paint a picture for you to understand. So that is what I meant by leadership. The religion reinforced the false concept of leadership. And so it became a tool for the majority of the people, especially Black people, to be subdued tacitly, because it was a tacit way of us not rebelling or understanding our place and our role in society and in life. And so it tacitly eroded our consciousness. And in place, we embraced religion and we began to practice religion. And anytime a people hold on tight to a religion, it becomes a tool and a weapon for destruction. I'm going to go into details again next week and explain. If you look at the definition of leadership, it passed on from then we had the Greeks who were ruling the world. The Romans took over. And you know, the Romans came into contact with all the books and the writings of the Greeks, the library of the Greeks, and they did not burn or destroy the libraries or the writings of the Greek. What they did was they took over. And so they realized the definition that had been given to leadership. And so they decided, like I said the other time, that is where the issue of aristocracy came into being, where a few group of people who've been ordained or they've been gifted to rule over the majority of the people. So you have to belong to that class, and they gave a classification how you can be a part of that class or how you can belong to that class to be a leader. And so the Romans took over and they also passed it on to the British. The British took over power from the Romans. And the British, as we know, that small island conquered almost the whole world at a certain point in time. And so this concept of leadership, which was reinforced by religion, was used to subdue Africans, especially. When you read the Carter G. Woodson's book, The Miseducation of the Negro, you would understand that the colonizers knew the power of the mind. And so they decided to attack the mind first. That is why I always tell people, don't take some statements lightly. I don't entertain things like, oh, that's the white man. Oh, that's the black man. Oh, you know, black men are, yeah, this is the doings of black people. Black people are always like this. White people are always like this. Subconsciously, it reinforces the superiority or the inferiority of one particular race, depending on the construct of your statement. Okay, so we don't have to play with certain things, especially when sometimes you talk to people and they go like, oh, you know, in the wisdom of the white man, he did this. And I'm like, why not in the wisdom of man or in the wisdom of the wise man? Because it's not the color of the skin that made or that created whatever you are seeing. It is the mind. And scientists have made us understand that the mind is the same. The brain of the white man is the same as the brain of the black man. They're no different. And so it is the power of the brain or the power of the mind that creates or invents. It is not the color of one's skin. And so when the British took over, they decided to reinforce this misconception of leadership. And so it became the master and the servant relationship. And that concept has been carried out throughout history to now. And if you look at the Western world, you understand that their concept of leadership is different from the concept of leadership in Africa. I know it's some people are going to struggle with this statement, but then I made a statement the other time. I said the most dangerous person is the highly schooled, uneducated person with power. The most dangerous person is the highly schooled, uneducated person with power. And somebody might think it's a dichotomy. How can somebody be highly schooled and uneducated? You see, when you're being schooled, you're being told what to do, how to think, how to behave, when to demand something, when to speak. But when you are educated, you are enlightened to see your gifts and see the need for you to develop your gifts to serve the needs of the community in which you find yourself in. So these are two different things. So no wonder people go to school, attain all the degrees, and come back home, they can't find job to do. They're not being useful. Why? Because they've been schooled. You've been schooled to speak big English, big grammar, fluent English, to the point that you even believe that your fluency in English language determines your level of intelligence, which is a lie. Which is a lie. And so when this concept was reinforced, it made us believe that a group of people who have been ordained to rule over us are supposed to be the only people who are supposed to lead. And so sometimes you hear the question, is leadership born or leadership is made? I'm not going to answer that question today, but keep thinking about it as we go along. If you follow us religiously, you get the answer for yourself. Our leadership is leadership born or leadership is made? Some people would say, are leaders born or leaders made? Whichever way. But I prefer to say leadership because leadership is different from leader. I'm not going to go into that as well. We will shelve that for as we go along. I would explain that. And so it created us and them. So some people misunderstood leadership to be a concept of power. And so if you don't have that power, you cannot dispense leadership. Some people misunderstood leadership to be a concept of influence. So if you don't have that influence, you cannot dispense leadership. Some people misunderstood leadership to be a concept of a rulership. And so you need to attain a certain level to be able to rule. And after today, the next section, we're going to talk about the misconception of leadership, what we've been made to believe, which is not true. about leadership. And I know it's going to be a struggle, but let's get along and we would understand. We, like I said, on this platform, we're going to unlearn certain things and learn new things that will empower us to take hold of our environment, first of our lives, and then of our environment, and be able to dispense leadership to the development of our community. So this concept stayed with us. And you see, that concept is what is being used within kingdoms. I know it's going to be a little heavy, but let's get along. The concept, the misinformation or the misconception of leadership is what is being used in the kingdom space. Let me put it that way. So it is a space of rulership. It's a space of power. It is a space of influence when it comes to the rulership space. And rulership is not the same as leadership. Rulership is not the same as leadership. You can write it down. We'll get that concept as we go along. So this concept of the misconception of leadership was rolled into our schooling system. And so our schooling system did not equip us. It did not empower us to do for ourselves, to develop ourselves in order for us to be enlightened to develop our community. The school system gave us an opportunity. One thing I want to say here before, education empowers you to create opportunities. School system gives you an opportunity. The school system gives you an opportunity. It prepares opportunities for you. Education empowers you to create an opportunity. So that is one major distinction of leadership, of education and schooling. And so this was ruled, this misconception of leadership was rolled into our schooling system. And so we had people who would go to school, get their masters, get their doctorate, and they will still be in that mindset of not being able to create for themselves and for their communities. What it does is the more you're schooled to the highest level, the more they make sure you become uneducated to the highest level. So the statement I made from the beginning that the most dangerous person is the highly schooled, uneducated person who has power. It's being played out all over in Africa. You can see it all over in Africa. All over in Africa. With the exception of just a few countries, probably about 4 countries, which is a shame. But then this whole thing, or the place of Africa now, where Africa is now, was planned and programmed by the Western world through the miseducation of the continent and the misconception of leadership. And so if you take the average African youth and ask, what is the definition of leadership? the first thing that is going to come out of their mouth is influence and power. Because that is the misconception of leadership. I want to wrap this up for today. And next week, we're going to talk about what leadership is not. And in the fifth episode or the edition, we're going to start talking about what leadership is. So I want you to stay with us and also share the video, invite friends, family members, whoever to be a part of this discussion. I don't see anybody on the the Facebook. So I'm now going to go to the Facebook for questions and comments, because I don't really see anybody on Facebook as of now. So in a nutshell, the leadership we have or we've been made to understand in Africa is the misconception that was created by the ancient Greeks to be able to control their environment or to be able to control their system for a group of people to rule over or to create an aristocratic society so they can rule over the people and be able to manage the craziness within the Greek environment as of that time, which was borrowed by the Romans, passed on to the British, and now it's been entrenched in the mindset of the African. So if anybody is asking, why can't Africa, with all the gold, with all the diamond, with all the mineral resources, why can't we just develop? Why can't we do the things the people who don't even have half or next to nothing in terms of natural resources are doing? It is because of the misconception that has been planted in the subconsciousness of the African, the misconception of leadership. Because the day we understand leadership, the concept of leadership, will be the beginning of Africa rising to take its rightful place. On this note, I'd want to say thank you so much for being a part of Leadership Academy today. Next week, Friday, same time, 5:30 to 6 o'clock, we're going to continue with Leadership 103. Today is 102. I know sometimes I'm not able to get on here for us to have the discussions or to have the class, but as and when I'll be able to get on here, I'll put up the notice ahead of time so we will be able to get that information and be a part of Leadership Academy. My name is Nana Osei Bonsu Jr. Of Afriwick International Organization and Certo Leadership International. I'll catch you on the flip side. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.